All right, so I am gonna do a video on this gas caddy. This is a 30 gallon. It also comes in a 35, and this is an Arxen. I guess that's how you pronounce this. But tell you the truth, this comes in a lot of different brand names. It's the same caddy, same pump, same everything. It just comes, there's just a whole bunch of different brands that sell it. They are made in China. I saw some questions on Amazon asking where they're made. This is made in China. There's a sticker right on back that tells you. And but I'm gonna tell you there's a couple of things you're gonna want to do, because there's a lot of complaints about the pump. That's probably the biggest complaint, is the pump locks up, or it doesn't pump, or problems with the pump. The next biggest complaint is going to be the fuel gauge doesn't work. And both of those things did not work when I got this fuel caddy. But if you buy it, if you do some preliminary things before you ever put gas in it or put it together, I think it's going to drastically increase your chances of these things working correctly. Now, should you have to do that? No, of course you shouldn't have to work on a brand new gas caddy to get it to work correctly. But you can either, if you buy it, you can either feel like you shouldn't have to do it, then put it all together and find out something doesn't work, or you can just bite the bullet and do these few little things and kind of increase your chances of success with this thing. Another question before I get to what I did to this thing to make things work. If you're thinking, I'm just gonna buy it and get a better pump, like a fill right or something, these threads on this outlet right here, this nipple, are metric threads. It's an oddball size, a 1-inch fill right pump is not gonna just screw right onto this. So you can tap NPT normal, National Pipe threads onto this, or you can, I've saw some people got a PVC threaded adapter and they just cross-threaded it and just forced it on with a bunch of Teflon tape, and it was good enough to seal it, and then it converted over to normal threads. However you want to do it, but don't buy it thinking you're just gonna replace the pump, because the threads are oddball. And a couple other things. It looks metal. It's not. It's plastic. So kind of deceiving. The lid here is also plastic. It does have really good, I really like the wheels on it. The swivel caster wheels are good, and it's got solid rubber large wheels in the back. I like that a lot. Let me get to what you do to this thing to make it work. I'm going to start with the pump, and then I'm going to go to the fuel gauge. So the first thing we have to do before you do anything is just go ahead and disassemble your pump. And I'm going to show you what's inside, and I'm going to show you what I did and what I think a lot of people, what I did to have to make it work correctly, which is the same problem I think a lot of people are having with these pumps when they seize up. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and take this handle off. Of course, when you buy it, this isn't going to be on there. So you're not going to have to do this step unless you did already put it together, or you already have one. So I'll set that aside. And the metal on these things, this thing's super light. So, when it seizes up, if you go cranking hard on this thing, it's just gonna strip this out or crack it. So once it seizes up, there's no sense in fighting it, because you're not gonna just force it to unbind itself. So I'm gonna go ahead and take all the bolts out. Now there is a rubber O-ring around this pump. You're gonna wanna be careful not to mess that O-ring up. All right, so once you take those bolts out, you're just gonna take this out, and what you're gonna do, there's gonna be some vanes back here in the pump, and if you don't hold on to them when you disassemble this thing, they're gonna come flying out. Or they're not gonna fly up, they're gonna fall out. So you can go ahead and take the front of your housing off and set it aside, and these are your vanes right here. So we're gonna just grab onto these and hang on to them when you take it out, and then they won't fall apart. Now all this pump is made up of, and I hope hopefully you can see this well. These are just held on by a rod with a spring on it. Good. I'm gonna get everything apart. And actually this one feels like it's still not quite good, so I'm gonna do a little more work to this vane actually. So what happens is these things don't fit really smoothly inside this housing. They're a little bit too tight on one side or the other. And what happens is it binds up and probably like cocks a little bit to the side or whatever. And then it just starts grinding against your pump housing. And you can see, hopefully, you can see the gouging here. And that's because this vane here, and I'm calling these a vane, I hope that's what it's called, but it was just eating into the aluminum and chewing it up, and it ended up binding, and you could not turn the pump. So the first thing I would do is take this thing apart and make sure that everything moves freely. It slides in and out easily on both sides. And then what I would do, if it doesn't, what I did is I have sanding blocks like for automotive body work, so it's nice and flat. But you could use anything, a piece of wood with a piece of sandpaper on it, whatever. And I just took that and I just sanded back and forth. And I got this nice and smooth and brought it down just a little. It's just slightly out of tolerance. You know, the tolerances on these things aren't perfect. Obviously, it's an inexpensive pump. But you just want to make sure that this is nice and smooth. And if it is, right from the beginning, you won't have to do anything. You'll be good to go. You can just go ahead and put it back together and use it. Now you see my O-ring didn't come out, so watch that O-ring. If it falls out, you just have to make sure and get it back in and not damage it. But to put this thing back together, it's pretty simple. All you do, and it's just, all this is, it's a real simple design. There's not a whole lot to it. All it is these two vanes are inside there, and this spring just pushes them out against this housing. So as it turns, it makes a seal. And so to get it back together, it's pretty simple. All you're gonna do, you're gonna put your rod and your spring in that side, and you're gonna slide it through. Push it all the way through, like way further than it's supposed to go, so that you can get your rod and your spring up on this side. And you're just gonna take this one, and you might have to fish it around a little bit to get that rod into this hole on this side. Okay, so it's in now, and you'll know it's in. And then all you're gonna do is squeeze this in, and while you're squeezing it and holding it, let it go once it's in, and push in, and then you're gonna have to line up that back. It's got a little cam in the back. And then you'll have to get the front of your pump back on. It goes like that. So now it's back together. So now I'm just going to tighten everything back down and put it all back together. And when you tighten these, please do not over tighten these. This is, like I said, this is aluminum and these are steel, so it'd be very easy to strip this housing out. And then, there's not a whole lot you can do at that point. You're probably gonna have a leak. So I'm just gonna give it a little bit, I'm just gonna snug it up. The gaskets should do all the work. All right, that's it. All right, so that's it for the pump. And I'm gonna go ahead and put my handle back on. Actually, I'm gonna wait to put the handle on. I wanna move over to the fuel gauge. So what you're gonna wanna do before you ever put this fuel gauge in and put gas in it, I'm gonna show you the problem that I'm seeing. with this gauge. So all this gauge is a ball. Okay, so the problem with this float, this ball is aluminum. I tested it with a magnet, but this is metal. So what they did is they welded an aluminum float ball to a metal rod. And what happens is when you weld this together, first of all, you're welding steel to aluminum, but that's okay. I mean, it isn't like this has to be super structurally strong. It's just a float. But what happens is when you weld this together, the air inside this aluminum ball heats up and expands, and it blows a pinhole out of the weld in order to vent the pressurized air that's building up inside this from the heat of welding to blow it out. And that's exactly what happened here. And I bet that's exactly what happens to almost everybody who gets one of these and the float doesn't work, which is not uncommon from what I've read. That's just what's gonna happen. So there's a pinhole in the weld. And when if you get one of these, you'll see the weld. So all you do, take some JB weld, which is resistant to fuel and petroleums. Get some JB weld. I use quick weld, so it dries fairly quickly. Just let it sit overnight. And just get some JB weld and just put a good coating and push it into that weld really good. If there's a pinhole, it'll fill it up. And go ahead and just coat it. Get a good seal with your JB weld. And once you do that and it dries, you're gonna eliminate the problem of this thing leaking and not working, which, like I said, very common. A lot of people complained about it, and it's a fairly simple fix. Now I used a wire wheel on my bench grinder to clean all the paint off of this before I JB welded it. I don't know, you don't really need to do that. You could probably just use the JB weld, but use your own discretion. So that's it. So that's all you have to do to fix this float. And once you do that, then your float, you're probably gonna, you're probably not gonna have an issue with your float or your fuel gauge. Your fuel gauge will work. Initially, mine did not. Right from the beginning, my fuel gauge did not work. And even after you do that, it's almost like the ball is a little bit too heavy for what it's doing. It still wants to sink. It doesn't like float really good, but it's working. Maybe there's something you could do. You could put something on the end of that ball. I don't know, attach something that floats better. I really don't know. And I don't really want to spend any more time worrying about it. It's just, the fuel gauge isn't that accurate anyway. It's kind of an inexpensive little gauge, and I don't know. I just kind of take it for what it is. I'll just open the lid, I guess, and check the fuel if I need to. But so that's the next thing that I would recommend you do before you ever put this together. One more thing, and this is a pretty important one actually. A lot of people complain that when they first use this pump, they get some black particles coming out of the pump. And that's probably a combination of a couple things. Some people say it's coming from the inside, from the welding, and that's possible. The other thing it could be, you could get some metal shavings from breaking in this pump, and you could also get some little black particles from those, whatever those vanes are made out of, graphite or plastic, I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, I could see those things breaking in the initial use and having some particles come out. So all you do, it's pretty simple. All I did is I just put gas in it, and this gas filler has a fairly fine mesh screen on it. So I just put gas in it and then just put this back in here and then just cranked. I probably put 10 or 15 gallons through it, just running it. And then I would clean the little screen. I could see just a little bit of black particle. It wasn't bad at all. It probably wasn't even worth doing it. All my stuff that I put gas in has a fuel filter, but it's still worth doing because that is a complaint. So just pump 20 gallons of fuel through it. Look at the screen. If you see particles in it, clean your screen off, put it back in, pump another 10, 15, 20 gallons of fuel through it, and do that until your screen is clean, and then you're good. So definitely do that when you first get the gas caddy, to make sure that any particles or shavings that come out of the pump initially get caught. And that's it. And I'll just put my handle back on. And I think if you just spin, you saw it didn't take me very long at all to do what you just saw me do. It'd take you a little longer if you have to sand those veins down and get them to slide in and out easier if you have any kind of binding issues. But I would definitely do this before you ever put fuel in it for the first time. That way you don't run the risk of gouging up the inside of your housing like I did, which I'm sure affects the flow of fuel through the pump. So, all right, so that's it. I hope this helped. Thanks for watching. And you know, hopefully if you get one of these gas caddies and you have one already and you're having problems, maybe this will also help you get it going. So thanks for watching.